Welcome to the Yeoman Podcast. I am your host, Geoff Graham. Excited to have with me two very good friends, Ty Abernathy and Justin Owings. We are going to be talking about Paul Kingsnorth's most recent book, Against the Machine. The subtitle there is On the Unmaking of Humanity. The three of us have been texting about this book since we started reading it, sharing observations, comments, and thought it would be fun to get together and share our thoughts on Yeoman. So welcome, guys. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, great to be here, Geoff. Thank you.
We are, I'd hope, relevant, sitting in front of the fire. That's the focus of our conversation, a theme in the book. We also have two extra guests who may make appearances, and one in the background. Daisy is here, and Willa is off camera presently. And then Mr., our parakeet, is in the background. So if the discussion gets lively, Mr. tends to want to participate. So we may hear a little bird action in the background. Initial kind of overarching thoughts about Against the Machine.
I feel like it's a book you can't unsee once you read it. It shifts your perspective in a lot of ways. And there's no kind of putting the cat back in the bag, so to speak.
Yeah.
So excited to kind of unpack it a bit, but there's been a lot of ways for me that it's shifted the way that I perceive certain aspects of our culture, just the West in general, and sort of the what the forces that brought us up to this point in time. So I'm excited to dig in.
Yeah. Likewise. How about yourself?
Well, yeah, I kind of came at this book. I think at first I was drawn to it because, having heard of Paul Kingsnorth, I think from you, Geoff, it crossed my radar and someone else recommended it my way or mentioned it. The title of the book, I think I don't know, maybe it calls to a lot of people. I feel like it called to me. I'm not a fan of, I've listened to Rage Against the Machine plenty of times growing up. I have a hat that has raging on it, which is appropriate for today. I'll probably put that on for a little while. But there's something about that title, just against the machine. I kind of feel that it somehow connects. And I think, that was the first pull to me about the book.
So what if this is a difficult thing to summarize, but what Kingsnorth is describing in the book and then describing the history of how we got here, current state, and then he closes with some ideas for what we can do in the future, is that we are being engulfed by a machine that is kind of atomizing our culture, unrooting us as a people, and trying, and he would say I think he would say there's some intentionality about it, trying to sap our humanism from us. And he references Lewis Mumford's a good bit. It's the what is the term for it? The mega machine. This a machine made of human parts. And that we're all sort of becoming cogs in a way that is frustrating and unsatisfying for us, and ultimately will lead to a very, very dark place. I think there's been some criticisms of the book, which I would say are valid, which is it is kind of dark. There's some dark spots. Would you all agree with that?
Yeah.
I mean, I've read a lot of similar critiques. I think the book is this infused with hope. That is sort of my lens on it. Yeah. I can see where others are coming from, but to me, it's such a hopeful book because I think a lot of the themes in this book kind of weigh on us oftentimes, and we feel it, but we can't put words to it. Mm-hmm. And I think Kingsnorth puts words to some things that needed to be named, and thereby wrangling down the beast that allows you to sort of tame it in a way. And so to me, it was very life-giving and hopeful in many ways. So yeah.
I like that too. I definitely read it with the hope that it would be hopeful, because I feel like I've just been thinking about this topic for a long time, and it can take you really dark places. So, looking for that kernel of hope and thinking, how's Kingsnorth going to take this problem and illuminate it, but then help direct us somewhere that is, where we can take action in an affirmative or, a life affirming kind of way. But it's dark. It's dark for me anyways. I thought it was dark for a long time. And I think it still is dark. The book itself, the cover is dark.
Yeah.
It's like gazing into the abyss.
Yeah. A digitized dark forest.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I on my first read of it, well, I've read it once and then I came back in preparation for this and went through all my notes. I was very dissatisfied with the end, and not to jump ahead on that part, but I feel like Kingsnorth was exhausted in the writing of it and it kind of ended. And he ended after a couple, 3 chapters of the hope part. And I felt like there was so much more that, having been familiar with his work, he was equipped to talk about. And yet, oh, hey, we might have another visitor in with our thing. My daughter just walked through and she has read some of his essays too. But then when reviewing my notes and going back through it and like the things I underlined and the comments I said, I was like, wow, there's some really, really positive things at the end of this. And it made me rethink the critiques that I found had read were valid about, oh, this is really, really dark. And, and this book crushed me. I think, who is it? Emma Collins has a review of the book that I thought was a bit unfair, but she does spend some time really kind of talking about how dark and sad it made her. Maybe I thought we might end with this, but maybe we start with one of these, kind of a theme that can bring us in a hopeful direction, but fatherhood, parenthood, fatherhood. The three of us, a thing we have in common is we are all parents of, my kids are the oldest, but not, they're still young. Ty's, yours are the youngest. And we've all kind of have at least part of our career in technology. And we probably became parents, maybe not you, I'm guessing you, at a period when there was so much optimism for the internet age and how positive it could be. And that's how I felt when my kids were first born, in the mid aughts. Is that?
Yeah, I'm a little embarrassed to even say this. But I worked at Google for about 7 years, and while I was there, Google Glass came out, and Google Glass was widely derided and just, what is this thing? And I was curious about it. Maybe this is something that's going to happen. And so I got,
you were a glass hole.
Yeah, I was, I totally had it. And it's, and my kids were really young. I had, at the time, I have 3 kids, I had 2 at the time. They were, I don't know, let's say 2 and 4.
Yeah.
And what was amazing about Glass, was that you could, in an instant, get an eye view experience on video with your kids. And so I would turn it on when I'd pick up my daughters at daycare, and, I'd capture this moment of them, hey, dad's here. And they'd like run up to me. I mean, it's kind of, I can watch this video. It's like almost emotional just thinking.
Yeah. Right.
On the other hand, you're wearing technology on your face that is distracting, and people notice it, and you feel super awkward about it. I got rid of it after probably a year or so, and I didn't wear it exclusively because when you wear that kind of thing, but yeah, the optimism was completely there. This is something that could, help me capture moments that I would love to relive. And I still watch this whole video.
Yeah.
And it's like one of the best videos I have of like a moment in time. So,
I I remember that period. I mean, Steve Jobs this is maybe a little earlier than this, but before he passed away, he was so optimistic. And I think genuinely Kingsnorth has, maybe in this book or maybe elsewhere, talked about the iPhone and the Black Mirror and all these sorts of things in a very dark way. But my sense of Jobs at the time was he was really optimistic for what iPhone and then the iPad could do to help create great environments for young people. And perhaps by the time he died, I may be reading too much into it, he was beginning to have great reservations about that. And I wonder how that guy, such a big force in technology, like if he would have pushed for a big pivot that I don't see Apple doing now. Apple seems to be leaning hard into kind of the glass mirror aspects of technology. But so I feel like we were sort of especially me and you at that stage, we were kind of the experimented on parents and kids. We're like, oh, this new technology is here, and now we're parents in it, and my son and daughter were like the first to be around that. But you were a little later, right? Like, how old is your oldest?
I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Yeah, so you're 15 years behind me, and there had been some like time to take a moment and reflect on the impact of technology on children. Like, talk about that.
Yeah, by the time we started having kids, there definitely was, maybe there wasn't a mountain of like research backing it, but enough conversations with parents and seeing friends with kids and just going out to restaurants and seeing how just everyone was glued to a screen. That's enough to sort of be like, whoa, we got to think differently about how we're approaching technology. Now, so as a technologist, I tend to, my default mode is like eternal optimism for like where we're headed. Technology will bring us in, right? And this book has been really challenging for me in a lot of that regards. And your comment on Steve Jobs, I think he would still be that eternal optimist, and where things are going. And, but as far as raising children in this moment, I thought, Kingsnorth quotes, Wendell Berry in his essay. I think it was Family Work. And he talks about what are the things that have been, that have kind of transformed the home into, more of an ideal, less of a reality. Right. And there were three things. It was cars, it was TV/mass media, and public education. Right. And these three things, have been definitely three categories that as a family, we've tried to kind of step back and sort of reassess our posture toward. So just in the last couple of years, we've gotten rid of the TV in our home. We have pulled our kids from traditional school into, homeschooling. And we are, trying to live, we take one day out of the week and we attempt to not drive at all, at least far distances, to kind of just be more rooted in a place. It's not easy to do in Atlanta, but, so just like little things to kind of resist, the pull of culture. And even my 8-year-old already thinks that we're like crazy. Like why don't we have a TV? Why don't, like, it's already feels very radical to her. I'm already seeing her sort of like pick up on these things. Like, why are we doing things differently? And I think it's a good thing. I think it's going to create, some challenges with our daughter in particular that is, not keen on being different, but, these things don't feel radical, but I think they are, in this moment.
I love that. What you just shared reminds me of another good friend whose kids are almost the exact same age as yours. And they have a similar approach to these things, and they have all their close friends have the same, but their kids are in, regular school and things like that. But they have a community. They've intentionally come to an agreement with the community around them, around some of these values, which has helped abate or attenuate that sort of weird, different kind of pressure, which is really, really, I think, can be hard on people who aren't so comfortable, especially little kids, with being or young people being radicals.
Well, I think definitely Kingsnorth speaks to the importance of community, right? And having that sort of, and I mean, having other parents that are aligned and just in some ways, that at least
that's one of his prescriptions at the end. I don't jumping ahead.
And it's like that makes the work that much easier. I mean, it is incredibly hard to sort of resist many of these forces. But having other like-minded parents definitely helps for sure. We, my wife and I started school a couple years ago, and, that was part of the hope of that is like, let's find like-minded families. And, we've since sort of scrapped that endeavor. It was actually a model that was very tech heavy. Yeah. We've since pushed totally against that and are like, no, we're anti-tech in the classroom now. And,
you're against the machine.
Against the machine. Yeah. But it's hard to find community though, that especially with young kids, similar age that have shared beliefs in this stuff. So
it requires a great deal of intentionality. Yeah, I think, which I can't remember if Kingsnorth talks. You must be intentional and discriminating about those things, whereas prior to the technology being all around us, you just kind of lived your life and this stuff happened naturally.
I want to touch on that for a second because I think that so my background, technology, whatever, related to that, experimentation, a lot of experimentation with technology, and something that I have heard over and over again, especially the last 5 years, and I'm in the marketing and the communication space, is this use of intentional. Like, we have to be intentional. So a company I worked at for a while, part of the idea of the story that we wanted to tell was that teams needed to be intentional about how they gathered and had meetings and workshops, and there needed to be planning, and you had to sort of orchestrate the experience. And when we were all remote, using technology to communicate, everything was intentional. Every meeting had to be put on the calendar. It wasn't this, there was no spontaneity. There was no serendipity. Now, the flip side of that is, let's go back to the office and then serendipity will happen. And that's I think a false reality as well. I don't think that happens. But you have to have this optionality that's present to actually communicate and connect with people. And we've tried to solve this by being more intentional. And I think that a lot of the great things in life, and as I get older, I think about this more and more, is a lot of the great things in life are incidental to whatever we're doing. So, the incidental aspects of being in a neighborhood, and if you live in a walkable community, and you go walk to the store, and then you have the experience of being in that neighborhood, of maybe seeing a neighbor, of feeling that distance and that that moment of reflection to go over there, whatever it is. You just have this all these incidental experiences. Versus, hey, let's put it on the calendar so that we can have a 15-minute conversation. By the time it comes, you don't even know what you're going to talk about anymore. Maybe you needed to be more intentional. You see what I'm saying? So instead of this kind of optionality being the force, we have to be intentional about it. And I think that, Kingsnorth, I think he thinks about that. And it's a lot more fun when things happen sort of spontaneously or sort of serendipitously than being intentional about everything. But it's also exhausting to be intentional about everything. Yeah, I need to construct my diet in a certain way to be healthy.
And in many ways, I mean, it's like that intentionality. You're right. You have to be incredibly intentional just to live in a way that, like, not long ago was just like the way that you lived out of necessity, right? Yeah. Like, being rooted was like, you were rooted because of necessity, because you depended on people and place for survival. That's no longer the case. It's out the window. So now you have to be crazy intentional to be rooted, right?
Something it was the default is to be unrooted,
right?
Like the standard is to, I think about that David Brooks thing. Did you share with me that David Brooks article on like family and the nuclear family? I think about that, like that we've kind of totally designed modernity around moving around, transientness, going to find a new place, setting up a new place, and you're pioneering thing, and you plop yourself down in a new town, and you meet someone else from a different place, and y'all begin to form your family all on your own.
Yeah. It's like the deepest ties, hardest to rip apart are family ties, right? And what do we do? We say like, we're going to cleave off the nuclear family from the extended, family, from your clan, your people, and just plop you down wherever, and you can go, and that's the modern way.
That's where the greatest economic opportunity is, or that's where the go experience and fun, like go out and experience the world. You need to go do something different. Where you're from, that's not good enough.
And that's cached as virtuous. It's like you're going out to make a name for yourself, to pull yourself up off your own bootstraps, like do it on your own. Like that individualism is completely counter to living in rich, a tapestry of community, right?
Yeah. This is a good, I would like to spend a lot of time on what we feel like Kingsnorth really gets right. Like what he especially gets right. And the first, I'll start. And the first thing I would say is his emphasis on rootedness. Mm-hmm. And he gives a great many nods to a lot of people who in a way, I actually read a kind of a gentle critique of him, that this book is really just talking about what other people have said about this thing. I don't think that's entirely true, but a lot of it is, and I think that's just fine. One of the people he really puts at the top of the list is Simone Weil, or Veal. I'm not sure how to say her name. But on the topic of rootedness, and spends a ton of time on it. And we'll see the first mention. I think the quote is great. It's from her book, 1943, The Need for Roots. Another nice thing a great thing he does, I think he effectively highlights how long people have been talking about this topic, how big a deal it's been for now hundreds of years. But Veal, I'm sorry if that's wrong, but to be rooted is perhaps the most important and least recognized need of the human soul. It's one of the hardest to define. A human being has roots by virtue of his real, active, and natural participation in the life of a community, which preserves in living shape certain particular treasures of the past and certain particular expectations of the future. Every human being needs to have multiple roots. It is necessary for him to draw well nigh the whole of his moral, intellectual, and spiritual life by way of the environment of which he forms a natural part. And that's just like, I feel like that's the recurring theme in the book. And that's like the top of the list to me for the things that he really, really gets right. Y'all's thoughts on that? Yeah,
no, I agree. I think he nails it. I think it's something that I don't think anyone can read that and not have it sort of speak to their soul in a way like, oh yes, I feel this. I think it also like it's interesting as he sort of, depicts sort of how the machine impacts us. It's really interesting to sort of see how like I live in Grant Park. It's a very walkable community. I think a lot of people have moved there to want that like community feel, walkability, and yet like being rooted truly.
Your farmer's market is awesome.
Farmer's market. Yeah. But to be truly rooted is to be like, it's messy. It involves staying in a place for a long period of time. Yeah. Like, I see in my neighborhood, people are just coming and going, right? It's just sort of a holdover to the next place, right? Maybe the nicer neighborhood or the what, and, it feels in a lot of ways people just come and go. And despite wanting this draw to something that like feels rooted, still very much in isolation. I'm going to come and go from my home. I'm not going to engage. I'm going to walk through the farmer's market, but I'm going to have my AirPods in while I do, like I'm going to make sure I don't, get entangled in any sort of, lengthy discussions or, make eye contact. So, it's this sort of thing. I think we're all, I agree with you. I think Kingsnorth nails the rootedness piece, and it is a very consistent theme throughout. I've been aware since reading it of all the ways that I unintentionally, while like, some of my life is sort of a facade, that sort of like signals my desire for rootedness, but then the actual like there's a part of the section of the book kind of talks about how we are a civilization of children, right? Like we're not
all adolescents.
We're all adolescents.
We don't want to grow up.
And we don't want to grow up. And I think part of the like being rooted is in part like growing up, like putting your big boy pants on and actually doing things that are maybe not fun, that are messy, so that theme of rooted
obligation and responsibility.
Yes, all those things that are not necessarily fun or not necessarily entertaining or are enjoyable, right? But are up until, modernity were like were virtuous things, right? And things of necessity, right?
Yeah.
And rooted was a necessity. You didn't have a choice in many ways,
His flip side of rootedness, and he talks about the kind of oikophobic indoctrination. He uses oikophobia a lot in the book, which is a great term. It's a fear of your home or aversion of where you come from or those sorts of things. Like we have this ingrained oikophobia in our culture. He I think says it's kind of born of the West. Maybe we can get into the West later, but I think that's unfair. Or I don't think that's totally right. It's a Western thing, but like this, it's almost like a sickness, like a self-loathing oikophobia that we often have. Like if I talk about the South a lot, but like a lot of Southerners, I think, have this oikophobic relationship with the South. A lot of people from small towns do. Lots of people from everywhere. You have to go somewhere else if you're really going to become who you are. But, what is it? Like we're commanded to love. And the very first person we have to love is ourself and where we come from for all its, all of its things that are imperfect about it. We need a leather.
Yeah.
Think about that I always get the Chesterton quote wrong, but like Rome, men do not love Rome because Rome's great. Rome is great because men love Rome, or something like that.
Yeah. I think one thing kind of along those lines, but another thing I think Kingsnorth really nails is this idea of how the machine is creating this monoculture. As we become uprooted, we are also all starting to look. Everything's becoming homogenized, right? Yeah. We're looking the same. We're talking the same. The street punk kid in Brooklyn is going to dress and talk the same way as the street punk kid in Sweden, right? Like we're all having this sort of, through the machine sort of culture is becoming unified and all of the, you mentioned the South, all of the sort of regional and local sort of flavor and color that like really creates culture is again being sort of looked down upon, right? It's kind of, that's
provincial or
exactly. And we're running from it toward this sort of monoculture of like, this had one worldview that to me is kind of scary and sad, like very sad. It's like to find a place with true culture today is like incredibly hard. And when you do, oftentimes it feels fabricated. It feels like a
caricature.
Right. Exactly.
The second thing I had on my list of, I feel like his outstanding observations is his critique of globalism. And I think he probably in a real long discussion, we probably have some disagreement about why and how that came about, but he used the term, mammon worshipping business cabals to describe financialization. And he talks about the globally financialized, homogenizing, worldwide market. And he also talks about the connection between modern conservatism, which I think at least in America, he kind of essentially means kind of Republican Party type stuff, as though I don't think that's, particularly in the modern day, I don't think that's entirely limited to right or conservatism or whatever. but is government promoted global capitalism. That's sort of what they exist for. I feel like those criticisms and observations were also right on.
There's this kind of force that he speaks to throughout the book that I think in both cases it comes back to this idea that the machine benefits from turning human beings into commodities or fungible goods or resources that it can use and swap out however it needs to. And this is something I thought a lot about as it pertains to, and you can connect right in the corporate environment, is that when you stand up at an organization of a certain size, you have to have people you hire for the jobs, and you have to find certain ones that meet certain qualities, and you hire them to have certain responsibilities, and they do that work. But if they at some point feel that maybe they don't want to do this particular thing that the organization expects them to do, they can't say no. If they say no, they lose their job. They got to get replaced. So, and you could say, well, that's work. That's how business operates. But if you kind of zoom out on that a little bit, this kind of fungibility of people, it's sort of demoralizing, and it kind of is dehumanizing a little bit. People have to be swappable widgets that you plug into an organization. And then you kind of step away, and it allows this organization to do things that are, maybe not great for anybody, and maybe immoral.
Yeah.
I think about just morality, and I don't feel like Kingsnorth necessarily gets at this. Maybe catch me if I'm wrong here. I didn't catch this particular idea, but to me, morality is kind of it's an outcome in some ways of our humanness, our human nature, what is right or wrong, and how should we treat other people. The morality of an organization is derived from its reason for being, whatever that may be, the profit motive, or maybe it's a political motive, or whatever it is. And that is its highest and best purpose, and it will use people to achieve that highest and best purpose. So
Totally agree.
Yeah.
We talked about that, or Zach Slayback and I talked about that a good bit a couple episodes ago when we talked about Pope Leo the 13th's Rerum Novarum.
Right.
And the tension between this in the late 1900s, the emergence of sort of the industrial financialized corporation, and the tension between worker and owner, which becomes very real in an environment where the leaders of the business, the managers, whoever, have a fiduciary obligation to investors who do not know the workers, do not know the customers, but the leaders of that business have a kind of a weird quasi-machine-like, in the machine's framework of morality, moral obligation to maximize return. Which is something that tension is not present among the closely held small business owner, or even the larger company within a community that, for reputational reasons, can't abuse workers or customers. But at a global scale, or at the larger scale, the manager, leader, CEO, worker, their obligation is to maximize the financial return. Like they are failing in their duty as an employee if they do not do that.
Right.
And that's a huge tension. It's actually caused me a lot of, like, when I think about how I invest, what funds we have available to invest in other things, like it has given me a bit of a existential crisis isn't the right word, but like, how can I make sure that I'm not aiding as best as I can? We live in this world. How can I make sure I'm not aiding and abetting, so to speak, a business that is going to put aside its moral, whose leaders are going to be obligated to put aside their moral obligation to their fellow man, in order to maximize a return. Yeah. And that's pushed me over some time to more wanting to start, run, support, be a part of smaller, closely held companies.
Right.
It's like the cog in the machine of the bureaucracy is not intentionally doing anything evil, but by being removed from the externalities of that thing, they're able to wipe their hands of it. They don't see it firsthand, or it's just a decision of many. And that one, was it that one decision that was the evil decision, or these others, or, it's so convoluted. You can abdicate yourself of any responsibility, right? Or even be unaware as a cog of the actual implications, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like that is the, I don't know, as I read Kingsnorth and I tried to wrestle with his perspectives and framing on all of this, I kept asking myself, what is at the root of this problem? And the rootedness part of this, I think, is good, because rooted, what does that mean to be rooted, and how do we interpret that in general? And I think about, rootedness is having a kind of a certainty, this, and Kingsnorth talks a lot about home, and he talks about the hearth, and this perfect time to mention this.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's great. But,
I wanted us to go out while we were talking.
Yeah. But the fire in this hearth and the home, I think it's a really useful metaphor to understand kind of this centering force in your life. And so, that force makes you think, I always can go back home, like that kind of idea of, there's that place to go back to. Your family is there. Your what you really care about is there. But once you have lost that home, now you're just, you're lost at sea. You have to find another shore to land on. And, I asked myself, like, are we all just unmoored from the reality of that, of a place of home? But to be rooted, to come back to that a little bit, to be rooted and to feel responsible, for, a family or a community or the place you grew up, like you have some kind of responsibility to that place. It's a really hard thing, to expect that of other people, to expect, hey, we're all in this together. We're all going to take care of this community together. And I asked myself, like, is part of what's been going on in this kind of atomization is that it is hard. So people they kind of go this path of least resistance. I don't have to take responsibility. Mm-hmm. I can have my cake and eat it too. I can get the fruits of technology and everything else without any consequence. And it's only way after the fact that they sense something is lost in that process. And, not to go fully back to the children thing, the refrain I try and have tried to put on my kids is that they don't realize what they're losing out on because of this technology it's displacing all these other things in their life. And that makes them, again, kind of unmoored or uprooted, to put it in Kingsnorth's terms, from, their surroundings and their environment, which gets right back to Simone's point that the nature of the environment is what's so important. What is our environment? What's the milieu of our day-to-day life? Some long number of hours every day, the milieu is captured through, the phone or laptop or whatever. And, it only follows that environment's going to influence how we live and what we care about and what we pay attention to.
A point you made there about the, always being able, if you have home, always being able to go back to it. It made me think, I don't think he probably has talked, if not in this book, in other essays about things like your credit score or your social reputation or things like that. Like if you have a home, you can, no matter what, you can always go back to it and always be, that's what a home would be, and always be cared for. If you have a rooted place, it, regardless of the mess up that you've made, you always have this thing. So in the home is both, it's an obligation and a commitment to, deal with people that you might not want to deal with at that particular time, or help people through and their problems. But it's also it's a safety net, a huge safety net that absent it, we've talked about this before, that I think homelessness, the kind of chronic homelessness that we have and the trend there, I think that really is a reflection of transientness and people having lost their rootedness to a home, whereas the problems of poverty and mental illness and those sorts of things, those are effectively cared for with home and family, and an institution cannot love someone,
Right.
and it can't solve those problems. And I feel like this is compounding problems of, of the sad state of, many parts of our city's streets. It's just like these people lack homes and rootedness. They don't have anyone coming to a sister or an aunt or a brother or a cousin coming to pull them out of their dark place and help them.
Yeah.
We all have worked with technologies, and one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had was it was 2020, and it was April 2020, and that moment in time was when all these businesses were asking themselves, how are we going to survive, and how are we going to maintain our operations? And the company I worked for at the time realized, hey, we needed to reduce the number of people. And so one morning or one afternoon, I got a meeting put on my calendar. That next morning, I got on with the founder and CEO, and he told me, hey, this is coming. It's going to affect you, and it's going to affect these people on your team. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to give you a heads up first, because you've been here for a long time, and I know you've contributed a lot, and much appreciated there. And an hour later, we got on this call, and we were summarily laid off. And within 60 seconds of hanging up this call, my computer shut down and rebooted and locked me out. So I went from having worked at this company for, I think, a little over 3 years, and it's COVID, right? So no one's seeing anybody in April. And then suddenly my entire team overall I'm just cut off, cast out of the company. And, the company was not trying to do anything. They were trying to be good.
Probably trying to do the best they could.
Right.
From that. Yeah.
Right. And they were trying to be, while also, taking care of the people they had to let go, but also being secure in that process. And so that's why the computer shut down when it did. And I think some of that stuff has been sorted out over the years, but, in the last 4 or 5 years to make it a little more humane. But, that's a weird and very disorienting experience. And I think in general that the corporate experience is a lot like that. There is this kind of, we're going to throw a retirement party for, Sharon, who's been at the company for 25 years, and there's some cake and some pizza, and we all show up and we wish her well. And then she disappears.
Yeah.
And that is, that's how our system, it works today.
Yeah.
And it works, because we sort of atomize everybody and turned us into these kind of widgets that we can swap out.
Yeah. The Wendell essay I referenced earlier, Family Work, talks about the way that the automobile sort of just, took us in all sorts of directions away from one another, away from community. And so then now we do the work out there, right? Not at home or not in a local community. And that sort of doing the work out there is always, it's never rooted in a community and a people, right? So when it ends. Like you losing, your job and getting shut down. It wasn't just the loss of a job. It was a loss of community, right? During COVID, everyone's virtual. Suddenly your community, which was virtual, just ceased to exist in a moment, right? Yeah. That's a very jarring, when you think of it in those terms, where do we find community today? It's an abstracted community. It's a network. It's a group of people that we network with professionally, personally. It's never tied to a place.
Right.
So when those networks break down or dissolve, those people might as well disappear.
Right.
Because you live in a city like Atlanta. It's like you're never like, you know, there's no serendipitous bump into Debbie who had her retirement party, like, you know, a couple of years ago. Like, no, it doesn't happen.
Right.
And that sort of, we crave community, but the way we get it is in these sort of abstracted networks that are very fragile and break down and, can be very jarring. It's those moments of like, oh, I've just been shut off from these people. How do I even connect with them? I don't even have their cell phones because I'm slacking them all the time, right? Like, so it's, no wonder it's such a jarring experience, you know?
Yeah.
Kingsnorth really, he spends a lot of time later in the book, criticizing cities for that reason. And as you were describing that, I'm thinking about my, you know, I don't think I can do it effectively, but I have a foot in a small town and a foot in a, you know, in a big city. And this is a small town. So you run in like it's all there. Yeah. Everybody's there. You don't know everybody, but you know someone who knows that person. And I say that even as me, who's not kind of from the little town where I spend a lot of time, kind of only been spending a bunch of time there for the last half a dozen years. But Kingsnorth really does criticize cities for these reasons. And I think, like reading into it, he's more criticizing a mega city. And he would, I think he would characterize Atlanta, it would fit his mega city definition for that. Whereas like a Greenville would not. Like that Greenville would be like, that would be like what a city ought to be. And this outsized scale of the city is dehumanizing for those very reasons. Yeah.
Well, you know, just extend that idea a little bit. And then, you know, again, I'm not sure Kingsnorth touches on this point. He does. I mean, he talks about the internet, in general, but the internet it's giant cities of communities and where you have relative anonymity, in any given time. The consequences of your actions, you could be a complete jerk on, one social media platform and no one knows about it. Right. You know,
you can be anonymous.
Yeah. And you know, what does that invite in terms of, what does it invite on your soul? You know, when you suddenly can get away with anything, it's like the hollow man kind of, or, the invisible man, whatever, you know, what do you do when no one's watching? That's what virtue is. Right. And if, as we move more into this digital way of being, we're, you know, no one knows this from anybody.
Yeah.
You know?
As you say that, I don't think he touches on that theme in the book. That would be something that there could have been a chapter on that topic. Am I right? I don't remember that.
I don't think he would. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't think so.
Oh, yeah. No, you're so right. It's like this, he talks about the machine. I don't recall him talking about the impact on the pull against our need to be virtuous, that the anonymity and the participation it's this giant community has.
Yeah. But I do think it connects back to the rootedness, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. We can come back to more of the things that we really think he nails, but I do have some critiques. Are y'all okay to go into
one more thing before we?
Yeah, please do that.
You brought up globalism before, and I want to read this quote real quick, because to me this was like, I feel that this summarizes sort of the bargain with the devil that we've sort of like allowed to sort of like seep in. It's a John Maynard Keynes quote. I had to look it up because this can't be real. This is says, I see us free, therefore, to return to some of the most sure and certain principles of religion and traditional virtue, that avarice is a vice, that the exaction of usury is a misdemeanor, and the love of money is detestable. That those work most truly in the paths of virtue and sane wisdom who take least thought of the morrow. We shall once more value ends above means and prefer the good to the useful. We shall honor those who can teach us how to pluck the hour and the day virtuously as well, and the delightful people who are capable of taking direct enjoyment in things, the lilies of the field who toil not, neither do they spin. He goes on to say, but beware, that for this time has not yet come, for at least another 100 years. And he wrote this about 100 years ago. for at least another 100 years, we must pretend to ourselves and to everyone that fair is foul and foul is fair, for foul is useful and fair is not. Avarice and usury and precaution must be our gods for a little longer still, for only they can lead us out of the tunnel of economic necessity into daylight. So, you know, the devil's bargain right there,
Yeah.
right? Like it's a, you know, down is up is down, right? But only for a time, right? All will be made right. And sort of this, like, the promise of globalism and like the promise the machine sort of brings on is like, yes, the end, like, we just got to get to there, right? And the things we do today, like, they're justified by where we're going. And sort of this sort of, I think that's sort of, again, the promise of like this, the technology gives as well. And like why I was so drawn to technology is like there's this promise of like this utopia you're ushering in, but we just have to get through this mess in the middle before we get there, you know? But anyway, I feel that to me would just like hit me so hard.
Oh yeah.
This is seeped into our bones and we don't even realize it.
Yeah.
That was actually one of my, it's a segue into one of my criticisms, which is he references Keynes. He references an economist, but he never talks about economics.
Yeah.
And I would say that maybe a related criticism is I feel like maybe Kingsnorth's experience just in his life is perhaps kind of detached from what we would think of as business. Like, and it does seem a bit detached from economics. When he talks about all the problems and the causes or this sort of, you know, creeping machine that comes there, I don't think he spends really any time exploring like policy, like what policy has there been, you know, or he talks a lot about nationalism and the kind of the jump from nationalism to globalism. And like, have there been some policies that maybe have changed the way we interact with each other financially? I think his general view toward commerce or trade is negative. Like it's the idea of like a business person is a negative person, and I feel like there's very much he positions things as core, and maybe this is kind of a European or British view. It's like between peasants and the oligarchs who are kind of servants of the machine. And that's sort of how it is. And as an American, that's just so dissonant to me. Maybe it's not American, but my view and my background is like, that seems so dissonant to me. Like my view is it's not the peasants versus the oligarchs. It's the, you know, where are the yeomen in that story? Like I feel like those are the heroes of the story, these small leaders in their communities, tradespeople, or they have the restaurant that's, you know, been in business for 40 years on the corner, that is the place that everybody goes to. These are business people who I feel like are the real champions, not necessarily business. It could be, you know, church or, you know, some sort of community organization or whatever. But I feel like there are real champions in here that aren't reflected in his peasant versus oligarch dynamic that I feel like is repeated over and over and over again. Yeah. That's a long way of getting away from Keynes. But when he was talking about Keynes, he never talks about Keynesianism. Like, you know, I'm no economist, but my take is like borrowing from the future to enjoy the fruits of today. He does, which is pretty bad. Right. But he does talk about that in the abstract, kind of boomerism. You know, I don't think he ever says boomerism, but he does talk about it in the abstract. But I feel like he misses something about trade, commerce, business. There's this really, really positive community building aspect to it. To him, it's everybody. We went from peasants to, you know, before the enclosure movement to now we have this. And I don't think that's I don't think his experience enables him to have a point of view on that. That's, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, my, part of the read that I get from Kingsnorth, and this is the first book I've read of his, and so I'm not as familiar with his past. So to the extent that I might mischaracterize him, that's an important disclaimer, I guess. There is a sense in some ways of this kind of reductionist aspect of peasants and oligarchs, right? That is a simplification of the way that these two things, these two groups are sort of pitted against each other. And I asked myself as I was reading it, I kept thinking to myself for a long time, I kept thinking about Ian McGilchrist. So, I'm when is
blurbs the book?
Yeah. Well, I'm like, when is he going to get to Ian McGilchrist? Like, it's got to be in here. It's got to be in here. And then he finally gets to it, and which I think is great. And, I am not, so Ian McGilchrist has written several books, but the two that he references are, I think it's The Matter with Things, and which is a 2-volume, massive work. I have not read those 2 books. I have read The Master and His Emissary, which itself is a giant undertaking. So, the footnotes are, I don't know, 200 pages, and small print. But just an incredible work. I mean, certainly one of the more influential books that I've read over the last 5 years. And the McGilchrist, no way I could even possibly do justice to it. And Kingsnorth couldn't either. I mean, there's just no way. But what McGilchrist gets at is that the way that our brains are constructed has a real influence on, how we experience the world. And his, to really simplify what he says is that we've become far too sort of left-brained. And anyone who has heard left-right brain is instantly going to be like, wait, that's all silly and, not real. And you would be doing a disservice to all the research and work that is in that space, which McGilchrist has gone in depth about. Yeah. But one of the things that is so central to McGilchrist's idea is this concept that the left brain attends to very specific, concrete, atomized kinds of things. It has to focus. And there's a similar idea in like Daniel Kahneman, who says, I'm going to paraphrase what he said, but there's nothing as important as what you are focusing on right now. Nothing matters as much. And you could say a lot about our current political climate and how it jerks us around by whatever the news is of the day or week. But this kind of focusing aspect of the left brain, it is at the cost of the generalizing and relational aspects of the right brain, which again, I'm simplifying. And something that I couldn't quite get to with Kingsnorth is that what you realize with McGilchrist, I think McGilchrist is right. I think we have sort of somehow overtrained, over-indexed, whatever you want to call it, on the left brain. The way the left brain experiences the world has this tyranny over our culture globally right now. And we need to have a more integrated way of being. And what I didn't get from Kingsnorth is that sense of an integrated way of being. It felt to me like we need to reject that left side of the brain. We need, and to put in the Gilchrist words, we need to reject the emissary and move back to the master brain, which is the right brain. And I don't think that's the way. I think what we need is an integration of the two. And that's why I keep coming back to is that, though there is a part of me that says, I'm ready to go Amish. I used to joke, I'm going Amish, that's not real. That's not something that I think any of us can do. And I think to be human is to use technology. It is, and it doesn't go back just hundreds of years. It goes back to biblical times, the fruit of, garden of good and evil, which I think Kingsnorth gets at. But we have mythologies that speak to this part of our nature for as far back as it goes. And I think that's something we have wrestled with as people, human beings, for forever. And what I look toward is a more integrated way of being. And Kingsnorth does talk about this disintegration as a part of this. I think that's the hopeful part to me is how do we move back to an integrated, way of being where the good of my life is more about what comes incidentally. I make intentional decisions about big things. And then all the nutrition of my life, the fiber and everything else comes incidentally to the big decisions I make intentionally, and not having to micro down to the tiny things and then create some kind of processed life, a composite life of all the little things that I want. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. I share your love for McGilchrist, and sort of that to me, like this book and Master and His Emissary have shaped my perspective probably more than anything in the last couple of years. But I also agree with you. I think back to a critique on Kingsnorth, I think one thing that's frustrating to me about Kingsnorth at times is he can be a bit of a provocateur. A bit of a prophet, if you will. Like he's going to talk in extremes and not leave room for much of the nuance and the gray. And that leaves when you finish the book and you were like, had this feeling of like, I wanted more as far as the hopeful. I feel like that's part of the Kingsnorth style a bit, is like, he's not going to wade with you through a lot of the gray, right? Like he gave that, he talked about the cooked and the raw,
Barbarian. James Scott.
Right.
And The Art of Not Being Governed is a great book.
Okay. Yeah, that's a list.
Yeah,
okay.
That's where that comes from.
But the idea, you read the book and you kind of feel the sense of like, okay, he's pushing everyone toward the raw, right?
Yeah.
To be all barbarians,
it is,
right?
Totally.
He paints for you what it is to be a raw barbarian, or at least gives you enough to kind of map that course, right? He doesn't give you a clear roadmap for that cooked barbarian, right? And yet he calls himself a cooked barbarian, right? But you can tell he aspires to be that raw barbarian. And I think he sort of aspires to push us in that direction. And so the rest of us are kind of left going, okay, what does it mean to be a cooked barbarian? And then how does that manifest itself in the big ways and the little ways in our lives? And that was very dissatisfying to me in some ways about Kingsnorth. I just wanted him to go at least come with me in some of that nuance a little bit. And I didn't feel like he quite went there like I wanted to.
And one of the people thinkers he celebrates through the book is Ivan Illich. I'm a really big fan of Ivan Illich. And that probably reading him, I don't know, in my 30s or so. Probably as a new parent, it sent me down from a kind of a generally sort of radical path to a more radical path. But I think Illich does a great job at that, like is appreciative of, makes an effort to think about scale and nuance and practicality and how are we going to live our lives and things like that. That may be overstating a bit with him. But on the tools side of things, one of his more famous books or collection of essays or whatever is Tools for Conviviality. And Illich is kind of a huge fan of technology. And also he's a believer that there are ways that you can use technology in order to advance conviviality and community and strength and things like that. And I think actually Kingsnorth briefly has maybe a half a paragraph or so where he kind of disagrees with Illich on that and says that's maybe Pollyannish. But Illich's thing is like, Illich didn't say this, someone else did, like, and I can't remember who, but God gave man tools, the devil gave him machines. And
so good.
But Illich's take on convivial tools is they are tools that we use, and they can be anything. Like the alphabet is a convivial tool. It's a tool that simultaneously increases our autonomy while also strengthening our interdependence with our community. Like it helps us to realize more while also connecting us more deeply by root, it roots us more. And in his take is that after a certain, I probably have this wrong, but after a certain scale, many tools that once served the purpose of helping us become autonomous and interdependent at the same time, when applied at a certain scale, they become radical monopolies, is his term, and then counterproductive to those ends. They start to eat away, and you have to be conscious about how you're using the tools and which tools you want to use for what purpose. And I feel like there's a nuance there, like this. I don't think really, or maybe he would, Kingsnorth would say all this technology is just bad in general, though I think he's sometimes said he wants to go back and live in sort of, the Stone Age. Not, he doesn't say Stone Age, but I do think he dismisses this, or he disagrees with it. I think he sees it, but disagrees with this opportunity that tools and technology have. In a way that maybe that's where the darkness I felt in it. Like, we're just not going to get, like, they're not going away. Mm-hmm. It's like we have to learn to live with them. Mm-hmm. He talks about the nuclear age and nuclear bombs and things like that. It's here. Like, we have to learn to live with it. Mm-hmm. And I think that requires us to make choices and be deliberate and discriminating in ways that other people didn't used to, but that's part of the, he has a bit in there, maybe I can find, it's part of the work that we have to do now in modernity.
The drawing of lines.
Yes, it's lines we draw. Yeah, yeah. Where's your line going to be?
Yeah.
We need limits.
Limits.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually, we didn't get to that in things I thought he especially got right. But his description, he has a bit of a manifesto on those limits.
Yeah.
Like it's like 2 paragraphs where he talks about how important it is to draw your lines.
Right.
Like, what are you going to tolerate?
Right.
And what are you not?
He has I forget exactly where he says it, but the way he says it is something to the effect of, the most important question to ask is, how should we live? How should we live? And I think, it doesn't really get any more important than that. And that's where I will say that, as while I might criticize the black and whiteness of the way he writes, which honestly drove me a little crazy for a long period of the book.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that he is taking a stand, an affirmative stand by the end. I think I probably would have wanted a little more there. I really enjoyed his chapter on the jellyfish tribe.
Yeah.
But then I felt like it kind of fell apart after that for me. The kind of reactionary, radical reactionary, is that what we call it?
Yeah.
That idea, he tries to build on that a little bit. And I didn't quite get there with it, but I do think that there is this need that we need to figure out. And maybe that's actually part of the problem, is that we got to figure this out. We got to figure out some kind of solid ground to stand upon. And we're unrooted. So we're looking in all these different directions for something that we can feel, righteous about, a belief that we can feel strongly about. And, I might find one idea really, like that's it for a little while. And then I realize that, well, that idea has these problems, and, I can't, maybe it's not as solid as I thought. Now I'm back to square one or whatever.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? And I think, in times past, some of those ideas, some of the rootedness came from, this is the way it's been done. And this sort of, this kind of, humility that, and I don't feel like he talks about exactly like this, but I feel like this is the way I think about it, which is that on the one hand, I think we have far too much hubris in our world today. All life's problems can be solved. We can optimize everything.
Yeah.
Whatever it is can be engineered properly. And I think that completely is all in this book.
Sort of technocratic, techno-utopia.
Right. The technique, whatever it is, there were a few words that were in the book for it. We can do it. We can solve this. But we've kind of gone down that path of hoping to solve everything instead of accepting that there are some things that maybe we can't solve, and to have humility and say, there are ways of being that I may not understand why I have to do this, and this, or it's uncomfortable to have to engage with my neighbor who's kind of being a little bit of a thorn in my side on this one issue, but I still got to engage with them. Robert Frost's mending wall, we had to go out, and we didn't want to do it, but kind of we needed to.
Yeah.
And so, we have those moments that bring us together, and then create this, blended, totally not optimized, messy way of being, but it's whole. It's whole food,
Yeah.
And it feels like something you can believe in. And you can feel righteous about in all its messiness.
It's unprocessed.
It's unprocessed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. God, that was taking me to something that I thought, we talked about this before we started recording, but that makes me think about what are things that we really wanted him to spend time on that he could have, but he didn't, or things that seem just missing that were in it. I threw some kind of props on the table, books there, but I am surprised he never mentions Jane Jacobs, which kind of blows my mind that he didn't mention Jane Jacobs, and not solely for Death in the Life of Great American Cities, but for much of her work, like Dark Age Ahead or The Nature of Economies or things like that, which are totally relevant to this. And per my comment before about kind of feeling that he doesn't really understand business and trade and things like that, Jane Jacobs totally understood all that.
Yeah.
Like she completely understood those things. He doesn't mention that. He talks a lot. He alludes to subsidiarity. I don't know that he ever uses that term. And he describes Nassim Taleb's notion of Lindy and what is Lindy and not, but he certainly doesn't use that term. And so that I'm surprised there's no Taleb in this book either, because there's tons of opportunity for it.
Right.
It's like there could have been 3 more chapters on subsidiarity.
Right.
And instead there's a bit of a suggestion like, what we need to do is have more smaller communities instead of really, really big ones.
Right.
And then you've alluded to, we've all talked about it, he spends some time on ascesis and restraint, self-discipline. And as we think about how to live through the digital age, how can we do it? That's another area that I really, really wanted him to spend a lot more, or could have spent a lot more time on. So those are a few things that came to mind. How about y'all?
Well, yeah. Well, one of the things that I wanted him to get more into was this kind of bureaucratization of life. And you mentioned Taleb, so it took me right there, and I'm not going to get this right, but Nassim Taleb has an expression that is something to the effect of bureaucratization is the means by which a man is separated from the impact of his actions.
Yeah. Skin in the game.
Yeah. It's totally skin in the game.
Yeah.
And, that idea of it's a fundamentally disintegrating way of being. And it just connects to this kind of web. And so one thing I really like about it, so I'm going to bounce this out. One thing that Kingsnorth does, he does it multiple times in the book. He has this kind of intro, or he has an aside where he talks about lying in bed and seeing the ways that the world around him is connected in this web of dependencies in every direction, the roads, the power lines, everything else. And he could see it. And he calls it the grid at one point. And that interconnectedness has always been there. I mean, we live in the world, set aside technology, we're all connected into these systems. The difference is that the systems that are at play with technology are these technological systems that we can't escape. We have no way of stepping out of. But coming back to the bureaucracy, bureaucratization of everything, it is this loss of skin in the game, this loss of agency that we, for whatever reason, have adopted into kind of our culture. I don't need to take responsibility for my shortcomings. It's the fault of whatever else. This kind of there's also this victim mentality tied up into it. And people want that. They want to feel, they don't want to feel the blame for whatever it is. And I say they, I mean me. I think we all suffer under this feeling of inadequacy, or like where we fall short, and bureaucracy kind of offers, hey, it's not your fault. You just do this one thing, and you're going to get this out of it. It kind of launders your way of being with the world.
So I think along those lines, but back to your question, or what I think it was what Kingsnorth didn't get right, or what you wanted more of. So obviously he talks a good bit about AI, right? And the concepts of technology, but I think there's a whole, like, what you were just talking about bureaucracy, and a lot of the things he's talking about. To me, his critique of AI felt very, I don't know, I hate to say this, but like, juvenile in a way, like very highlighting caricatures of, AI, not, priests in, Malaysia, and, things that are like, okay, yeah. I mean, to me, the real scarier thing is the way AI just, in the not obvious ways, the beneath the surface ways, will be transforming things in ways that you can't just be like, well, I'm not going to use AI, and like, just, we are all like going to be touching AI in so many different facets of our lives, right? I mean, he doesn't really he doesn't look at it through the lens of like the transformation that's coming, right? So back to bureaucracy, right? Back to like skin in the game, and have that cog in the machine has no skin in the game. Think about how AI starts to shape that, right? Think about how, I mean, in my world, I see how AI is coming for, our business supports the HR function, right? I see how like we're starting to see large swaths of HR teams getting eliminated, right? You have fewer people in these machines, these large corporations that are, those machines are points of friction, right? Points of friction are very good in a machine, because when were removed, now you have a frictionless function that is, going to be far more profitable with fewer people, because people are cost centers. They're inefficient, right? So, I had a client call me up and say, hey, I've got McKinsey on my door saying like humans are inefficient. Like you need to slash your team. And so to me, the scary part is like the way AI will start to shape these large corporations, their profits, their efficiencies, the way that will further dehumanize things as it eliminates friction in all of this, right? In ways that like are going to directly impact our lives, whether we choose to use ChatGPT or not, right? Like, and so that to me is what's really scary. I think we will have far less, you'll feel like we have far less agency in many ways, right? Life will become far more convenient. We won't even know we're using AI, and yet, it will, I think further give us this sense of unease that, we have less agency in our own lives. So I would have loved to have seen Kingsnorth sort of like tease that out a bit more, go a bit deeper. It felt a little bit surface.
He kind of brags that he never uses AI.
Right.
So it might be hard for him to do that. But both of those comments, I had a great lunch yesterday with a friend that was talking about businessy stuff that this guy owns, this software he's owns, founder of a software company that serves the small business. Totally serves the small business and a particular vertical. And he brought up in the context of AI where they were going with their company. He was like, so the problem with AI that is never going to be solved is AI has no skin in the game. And the customer wants to know that the customer, why they choose to work with someone, a business, a salesperson, anyone, is because they know that person has skin in the game.
Yeah.
And so if your approach with regard to AI is how you can remove people, that's the wrong approach. Right. It's like the AI needs to be helping people so that they can be true agents and kind of fiduciary actors on behalf of the customers they're supporting, because customers, they don't want an AI to take care of anything that's significant for them because it has no skin. If it is wrong, if it makes the wrong decision, or if it makes a decision that's not in your best interest but supports the board or whatever,
right?
Like it's not helping them.
Right.
And so he was really like, and maybe this is the tension between sort of the yeoman business and the giant financialized transnational corporation owned by, the Borg. But he had a very different view of AI, and his view was, or at least that aspect of it was not scary. he was like, we're thinking about it wrong. You think about like people, what's not going to stop happening.
Mm-hmm.
And
so I may push back on that a little bit. I think that in this moment that is accurate, but I think with time we might look back on that and see it being a bit dated.
Yeah.
Like I think as we fast forward, there will be a reaction in some ways that people do want more human to human service, people with skin in the game. But over time, I think that just fades away to convenience, to price, to these things that we are optimized for, almost to the point of putting them up on a pedestal as a virtue, right? Like, I think, you were telling us about your journey in your first Waymo the other day, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, who would have thought we'd ever be like, oh, that's a problem we need to solve for. Like, people driving us around is a problem. We need vehicles without people in them driving us around, right? But as soon as, I've had friends that like hop into one, they're like, it's amazing because I don't have to talk to anybody. And but like those machines are wired to like make certain decisions on the road that will, determine the fate of your life and someone else. And at first it's off-putting and it's like, I want someone with skin in the game. It's going to be, behind that wheel. And then after a while, you're like, well, it's convenient and it's more cost effective and I don't have to talk to somebody and there's no air freshener kind of smell in there. And and it just convenience and cost wins out, And so I just feel like in a lot of ways, like convenience and cost will win and it'll just kind of bleed it. Like we'll just forget even that we are interacting. The question of like, is this a human or is this AI will go away. We won't even have that sort of enter our conscience. We will conscious. We'll just continue to optimize for convenience, right? Like
I totally disagree. I mean, I think there will be aspects of life where that will happen, but I like the camera did not eliminate the painting. It increased the value of the painting. And the recorded music didn't eliminate the live performance. It increased the value of the live performance. Or I don't know if that's exactly true or not, but I kind of feel like that's going on here. I feel like I just don't see, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's going to be so good and get indistinguishable. And
well, let's go down to the music route, right? So you said the live performance will always remain. It's, yes, but what's a live performance? It's a concert. You buy tickets for 3 months in advance and you go and it's an event to see live music. What was music before?
Not live music.
Well, but what was live music before? It was a daily, like sitting on the porch with your family.
Yeah.
Music was a part of the home, right?
Yeah, right.
Live music was performed daily just out of like, that's how you did music. Yeah. You couldn't play amplified music. You couldn't, all these things.
So, for many people, it is still that way.
True.
Like for many families, like it's still that way.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they're, fewer and far between, but yeah.
But the exception, not the norm, right? And that's sort of what I think
right.
the norm I'm arguing will become more of a like, I don't care what I'm interfacing with. I'm optimizing for convenience and price. There will always be that sort of subculture of wanting the bespoke, wanting the, but yeah, I just think the forces are kind of orienting us in that direction.
I kind of feel like we're in a sort of a blip right now. Like the last 100 years, and I would say really more like the last 175 years, it's kind of it's a blip in sort of the way humans have existed with each other and the way our communities work and the way, like, it's just not, it's definitely not, and on the human scale of time, it's not Lindy the way we're doing it right now. This is not, it's surely not stay this way.
We've yet to figure out. I mean, how could we? It's early. We've yet to figure out the right ways to exist with these levels of technology, and maybe by the time we even got close, the technologies would have changed again. And I think that aspect of this is especially unsettling because we can't figure it out before it's moved and changed all over again. And I think that something that Kingsnorth didn't get into at all, and it's kind of maybe it's in the weeds, but there's this. It connects right into AI, but there's this kind of ephemeral nature to AI. You need an app, just build it and throw it away. We just create whatever we want when we want it on demand, and then toss it. And that is it is an assault on our ability to discern value and understand what's worth attending to and what's worth our time. To build software may be really easy now, and you can build incredible software kind of instantly. But did you need to build it at all? Was that even worth your time and attention? And something that I know that we've talked about in the past, and you thought a lot about, is time preference. And the time preference with AI is the next day, the next few minutes, and I think that there are a lot of side effects to the technology. This is always the case. The side effects of the technology are not seen till much later. And something that jumped out off the page to me, and I've since tried to find where it was said in Kingsnorth's discussion about AI, was, I've got to pull up here. This was from tech guru Jaron Lanier, and he said he has no truck with talk of conscious AIs or of robots going rogue. The big danger posed by AI, he says, is that humanity will, quote, die by insanity as a result of the blurring of boundaries between the real and the computer generated. And to me, that really stuck with me, because my world is writing, and it is this communications world, marketing and whatnot, and the lines to me are already blurring. And Kingsnorth said, it wasn't in the book, I don't think it was in the book, but he said it in a subsequent podcast he did, that he may have interacted with AI and didn't even realize it at this point. And I think that is something that is happening too. So you have this kind of, again, that's the grid. You can't escape it or whatever. But I know on a daily basis, I am subjected to the AI creations of people who have not in any way suggested that they're AI. And then online on social media, it is rampant right now, the pushing out of content that is AI generated content. And that is it creates what you could think of as a distributed denial of service attack on our ability to make sense of the world. And I think that's been playing out for a while. Even before AI, we've just been assaulted by content every day. The 24-hour news cycle, go back, when CNN started, and this has been coming for a long time. But at this point, now we can't even discern fact from fiction. We can have a major event happen with actual cameras recording it, and then have completely different takes on it. Yeah. And then you can have the AI generated right alongside that. And you don't even know. I know people are questioning eyewitness video recordings right now as real or not, and for good reason. And so this is an assault on our ability to make sense.
It's an assault on our ability to make sense of media.
Yeah, of media. Yeah.
But doesn't, at the same time, and of course, everyone watching or listening to this may be surprised to learn that this is just an AI-generated conversation. but I mean, we know we are here.
Right.
And this is especially, the value of this has turned way up in the last 10 years, I think, for everybody. And I think those lines in media are going to continue to blur. And so people will trust more and more what they smell, touch, feel, and see IRL.
Right.
That's my take on it. And I think that's probably if indeed that happens, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it will root them to reality. Yeah. I can't remember the parts where he talks about reality in here, but it will root you to reality to retain your sanity.
That's right. And he does, to Kingsnorth's credit, he does get into Marshall McLuhan's Understanding Media, which was his seminal work on, the medium is the message. That's where that's from that book. And it's McLuhan, I think, was way ahead of the time in thinking about media. And what is media in the word? It is a medium. It is in between, and that is what the screen has become for our experiencing of the world. So as more and more stuff becomes difficult to trust on media, I think we run this real risk of not being able to trust anything we see through a screen. So we come back to, the real world. And one of the funniest things, and so he totally gets at this. He talks about, you'll remember he talks about going to the store and how everything is marketed up the wazoo. This tea is passionate and, will evoke love and whatever it is. Everything is completely this hyperbole, and one of the words that is so often, some of the words used by AI in writing so much are words like truly, real, these expressions that overstate. They try and embellish whatever it is. And you see it all over the place online right now. And, I'm too close to this because I developed an app that is, very basic, but it looks for words that are commonly used by AI and it looks for patterns commonly used by AI. But, this one pattern, I call it the lady duck protest. And it is this idea that, it's pulled from Hamlet. The queen, is watching, this actress and she is saying, I'll never remarry. And she's just overstating her case. And Queen Gertrude says, the lady doth protest too much, methinks, basically saying she's telling on herself because she's trying to convince us too much. And so, that, not to go down to that rabbit hole too much, but I think that, Kingsnorth was hitting on that in this grocery store kind of marketing BS world, which I'm really close to. And to tie it back to AI and the insanity aspect of this, I think there could be a moment where we actually have to jettison our use of technology, or we say, hey, that's the slums. It's the red light district of my mind. And I'm just not going to go there. And you're seeing language about this already. You're seeing touch grass, you've got brain rot, and it's commonplace to think about those things. So maybe that's a hopeful thing, is that we are learning to appreciate what's real, real in the real world, way of talking about it.
That's sort of in the spirit of, potentially optimism or hopefulness. I kind of wanted to, like, one thing or something I wanted more of that he touches on that makes me really optimistic, hopeful. He alludes to the kind of he talks about the growing dysfunction of really, really large scale globalism or really, really large companies and kind of the dehumanizing aspects of it. And he speaks very positively to smaller scale and subsidiarity. And he says at one point that he hopes for, let's see, I don't know, 286, I think. He hopes for, that smaller communities will start to emerge. And that's the solution. And I feel like that's just the case. Like, you could call it secession, you could call it balkanization or subsidiarity, but when we need to attach ourselves to reality more, it is easier to do the closer we are to the people in our community. And I'm not suggesting we close build a wall like in M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. If you saw that, to build that sort of wall around and totally insulate ourselves from other things, but to make the things around us the most important things and have those have the most influence over us. I feel like that's happening.
Yeah.
And if a reason I'm hopeful, optimistic, hopeful, is that discussion of subsidiarity and localism, these are things like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it was still viewed, I'd say, as nostalgic in a bad way. Like, that's not what the future is. We're going to have a global economy, all these sorts of things. And I feel like people are asking for the leading indicator, not the trailing indicator, but people's expressed desire is for more realness.
Yeah.
And I feel like the expressed desire is the leading indicator of where we're going. And the reality is a trailing indicates what has already happened. But the expressed desire, this book being written, it attracting so much attention, it's being a bestseller, all this sort of things. I feel like that's a great leading indicator. The phrase touch grass, our kids probably, I don't know, yours are maybe young, but my kids' cohort is very aware. Like they're very aware of, the negative aspects of the Black Mirror you stare at all the time.
I'm encouraged by your hopefulness, and I think you tend to be more hopeful than I. I tend to see more of a pessimistic bend as I think about the future. So Neil Postman has a great book, Amusing Ourselves to Death. Neil Postman was influenced a lot by McEwen.
And Postman's another person that wasn't mentioned in this book.
Also this book, Technocracy.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, I haven't read that. But he talks about, it's a fascinating sort of, just walkthrough of how technology has shaped our lives in various ways. And his big critique is on the television and how it just transformed, through mass media, just the very way we think, right? Like it just has been so transformative in ways I'd never thought about. He's writing this in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
And, but he talks about how, this idea of news, like this was a new, like modern concept, this idea of like the news. What the news was just the things that you needed, to go about your daily life in your community, right? It were the things of necessity, maybe some of the gossip around it, but like it was hyper local. Anything that was like the news of the day was for survival and for well-being within your community, right? And then what happens as you have, print media going nationwide and global, the telegraph, the telephone, all these things kind of coming in, but really with mass media and the television, now you have news is global. And it's just this new thing. Like I need to keep up with the news and understand what's going on and what's global. And suddenly there's this abstraction where the body of information that you need to be well versed in is out here and not here locally, right?
Yeah.
And so this idea that like, that's, kind of what you're referencing, Geoff, that like, we're kind of maybe coming back to this sense for like more like local proximity, the having a bit of like the real, the here is more important than what's out there and abstracted. Like that is, that gives me a lot of hope that like that, and I do see it. I agree that I think that there's a pullback in a way that is back to more local and, kind of resisting some of those sort of, abstracted forces of media and, but, it is also, the premise of the book is that like, that Huxley's Brave New World is sort of the reality that we're ushering in here through technology, right? That we're being, and for those that haven't read the book, it's like, it's essentially, it's this dystopian society where like everyone's being lulled to sleep by the conveniences of technology and all these things that, we're being controlled by the very fact that we are so comfortable and we're optimizing for comfort and convenience. And I am fearful that like those forces are more powerful than the forces we're feeling now of resistance. That ultimately for every, kid your daughter's age that may be resisting, or aware of the negative impacts of the black screen, the black screen is still in their hand and the black screen will continue to pump, information, in a way that to me, like, it's hard to draw those lines that Kingsnorth speaks of. And so I'm more pessimistic that we will just, maybe we're more aware of this moment because so much is changing and AI is promising, so much radical transformation. I think we're all sort of feeling disoriented right now, but I fear that we just kind of get on about our business and at some point sort of get lulled back to sleep. And so like the conveniences of where all this is taking us, right? And so I'm less optimistic.
I hear you. I just like that that you even express that concern is like, how do you know you're not crazy? Because you're asking the question if you're crazy.
Right. It's a fair point. The Overton window has shifted to the point where we can have this conversation, and it's,
I was thinking about as I read the book, and I wrote this down a couple times. Did y'all ever read Fairy Queen, Edmund Spencer? Like it's, written 1600 or something. Old story. It's a monomythic journey, epic poem. But the hero of it is this guy, Red Cross. And I think he's supposed to be St. George. But, and Red Cross is on these quests, and he goes through these various things and suffers trials and tribulations. And there's a point where he encounters an old man in a cave named Despair. The man's name is Despair. And Despair persuades him that life is hopeless.
Sure.
And causes him to lose. And this is a book about faith. It really is a book about faith. And as probably every book was back then, I guess. But the Despair persuades Red Cross Knight that he has no reason to live anymore, and it would be better for him to take his own life. And so he pulls out his dagger, and the maiden, like ideal perfection, Una in the story, who's kind of symbolizes truth, rescues him at the last minute and reminds him that the greatest sin is to give up hope. That is the greatest sin. And that we cannot, should not, ought not give up hope, because to give up hope is to be insane. And so she persuades him, and he casts aside the dagger and goes on to do his own adventures there. And I feel like I don't know, that's my response to that.
Yeah.
Like, I think it is, there will always be another day, and it may get darker and darker, but the tide will turn. It always turns. I don't know if that's my take.
Yeah.
I like that. I think it's a good take. I think that I think ours is a time where, we struggle to find meaning because we're uprooted and we're so atomized, and this struggle is leading us down every dark alley and every snake oil salesman. Every possibility.
Right.
And we want to believe so bad that we're just ready to eat it up. But at the same time, we're faced with the imperfections and the wrongness of whatever idea, or if it's a religion, there's all these problems with it. If it's a person, well, they made these mistakes that were terrible. If it's an organization, well, they're an institution. They've look at all the bad they've done, and all that is difficult to debate. And so we struggle because we see this kind of corruption, if you want to call it that is almost in everything. And so in the quest for trying to feel like we can find something we believe in, the most righteous we can feel is to point out the wrongness of whatever it is on the other side. And so for a time, we'll be in this camp and this tribe and say, well, this is it. And that camp's mantra is, that is not it. And it is this kind of, this sort of derivative righteousness that comes from pointing out the problems with everything else. And I think that, one thing I really liked to bring about Kingsnorth is just that he is trying to, again, he's trying to put the stake in the ground and saying, this is a path forward. And, it's not perfect, but I'm going to go down that path. And I think we all have to find that. I don't think there is no future without technology and mankind. Even if we got reset to the Stone Age, we're still using stones. And so technology is part of what we do. So we have to find a way to live with it. And I don't know what that is, but I will say that I think, this, and when I mean this, like people talking, people, coming together and doing things together, whatever, and persisting over time in those relationships. I think that's more right than wrong, as imperfect as it may be at times, or as hard as it may be to do at times. And so, if this is it, then having a family is it. That connecting into your family is it. And I think Kingsnorth gets at that as well. And so let's take steps in the right direction, knowing that, it's messy. But if we move like a torpedo, we might go a little too far this way, and that we bring back on track.
Yeah.
And maybe the fact that we're having this conversation and that Kingsnorth is standing on the shoulders of a lot of really smart people.
Yeah.
And Postman, I'm using Artel's Death's awesome book, and, his book, Technopoly. I was going to call it Technocracy, but Technopoly is phenomenal, and it's not even 200 pages.
Yeah.
You can read it in a weekend. It's in my opinion, it's much more accessible than Kingsnorth. If you like Kingsnorth, read Postman. Both of these books are so good. And if you really want to go deep, go into McGilchrist too. But set aside all that. Just spend more time with people and do things together. Ray Oldenburg, The Great Good Place.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Episode 3 of Yeoman, we talk about that I talk about that with
Tavani,
the founder of Switchyards.
Yeah. It's so good. Like, how do we move more to that? I don't know yet. And that's what I know we talked about this. We think about this, and I don't know. That's where I want to get to.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. So on a more hopeful note thing, sounds like we're landing the plane here. So I'll say this. I do, what you said does resonate with me. And I do think there is a lot to be excited about and hopeful about in this moment. There's been a lot that has changed. And I think what Kingsnorth points to is like, the good thing is that like change happens, starting at the individual level and then at the family level. That like the home is the place where you can resist. Mm-hmm. And I do think that I am hopeful in the sense that like I'm able to sit down and have a conversation with guys like y'all that are thinking down the same path, or thinking about how to get your own proverbial house in order and what that may look like and where you're drawing lines and how you're drawing lines. That to me is incredibly helpful, as we're all kind of struggling for, what should our response be to all these forces upon us. And so I do have a lot of hope there at the individual level. I've seen personally in my life some of the changes we made as far as eliminating technology and how they've been incredibly life-giving, to our family. So I do feel a lot of hope there, as I think about it in the most local unit, of change. And so that is very encouraging to me. And so, to end on a positive note.
Well, to come back to you, I do feel like there is a great battle. Like there's a great battle that's happening between those who want to protect that and have the autonomy and the sovereignty to protect that thing, and forces of institutionalization and technocracy that had been building for many decades, that are now sort of entrenched in people in positions of power and organizations that rely on that technocratic, bureaucratic, globalistic thing. I think there is a battle mounting between those two things. And it's like, will this ragtag confederacy of sovereign communities be able to push back against that creeping kudzu, English ivy, whatever, that's going to just kind of try and come get everything. I think that's a real battle.
Yeah.
But I think it's destined to be won. I don't know how dark it's going to get, because I think it's destined to be won because it's just that globalistic centralization is unsustainable. It just can't persist forever. It will eventually have to give up and die on itself like a metastasized, whatever thing.
Yeah.
So
I think that's right.
Yeah. That's a good point. And they have to die in order to spring forth.
Yeah.
From,
And if it does, like, what are we doing now? Like, in anticipation of that. You guys are great. Thank you. Thank you so much for getting together for this conversation. I hope our sound worked out. If it didn't, then we had a great conversation.
That is right.
This is fun. Thanks for having us, Geoff.
Yeah.
Yeah, Geoff.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Till next time.
Till next time.